Unlock the secrets to transforming your life with perfect sleep. Say goodbye to restless nights and embrace 10 simple and effective techniques to achieve deep and restorative sleep. The first tip, the time that you wake up is very, very important. There's a clock inside your head that dictates the circadian rhythm. So if you wake up at the same time every morning, that clock is always in sync. Even if you go to bed late, don't wake up at a different time. Don't sleep in. A lot of us will notice the times that we sleep in feel nice, but we wake up more groggy and not revitalized after that sleep. Number 2, the number of hours that you need. Most adults will need around about 7.5 to 8.5 hours per night. It can go up to 9 hours per night if you are very physically or mentally active that day or all the time, depending on your job or whether you play a lot of sport. If you're getting less than that, so let's say people go, I can survive off 6 hours. There is under 1% of the population that can do that without any negative impact on your health. If you're that person, great. But most of the people that claim this are not those people. They have very particular genetics and it's very rare. So it's best to explore getting at least 7 hours as an adult and going all the way up to 9 hours and seeing where you are at in terms of how you feel after that amount of sleep. You might find that 8.5 is your sweet spot. I've got lots of patients that I know that their best option is to sleep 9 hours and they feel fantastic, especially if they're very active, let's say in their job, in laboring, or if they're very mentally active as a clinician like myself or an intellect in the university. Number 3, room temperature. If a human being is too hot, we find it very difficult to drop our body temperature and fall asleep. A drop in body temperature is needed to initiate all of these different mechanisms in our sleep architecture or how our sleep is essentially created within our nervous system and all our bodily processes. If you can change the temperature of your room, change it to between 18 to 22 degrees. Sometimes in winter it goes below that so you can heat your room up or wear more coverings or doonas to keep you warmer, but colder is better. Try not to cover your body too much in lots of woolen things and getting too comfy and putting on all these heated blankets. A lot of the times that feels comfy, but it's not good for your sleep. Most of those individuals are going to be dreaming wildly or finding difficulty falling asleep. Number 4, natural light hours. So there's a compound within our brain called adenosine, and essentially it builds up via just being awake, being physically active, and when we're exposed to natural light. So we've probably all had that occasion where I went away on holiday, I did lots of walking, and I was outside lots in the natural sun, and you found that you started to sleep really, really well. Well, what that was is the physical activity and the natural light you're exposed to built more adenosine up into your brain, which means that it put in more sleep pressure. And essentially, I tell a lot of my patients that it just snaps you into sleep really efficiently. So the time to fall asleep shrinks because you've got more adenosine building up what we call sleep pressure, because basically your brain wants to get rid of this stuff, and it does it via going to sleep. So if you've got more of it from natural sunlight and activity, then you will fall asleep more efficiently and deeply. Number 5, exercise. Now, like I said in tip number 4, exercise builds up adenosine. If you're also exercising, it's getting rid of stress hormones. Human beings are really inefficient at getting rid of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline when we're sitting down. When we move around, we get an extra boost in our blood circulation, and we're able to kind of filter that blood of all things we don't need in it. And sometimes that is stress hormones. We want to get rid of them. Human beings are very efficient at getting rid of these stress hormones when we're physically active. So that's another way exercise will benefit sleep. It reduces our stress levels. Another one is that it builds up a level of comfortable physical fatigue. Again, if I use that example of the holiday where you've just walked and walked and walked as a tourist, and at the end of the day, you're physically buggered, physical tiredness is awesome for sleep. Number 6, magnesium. If you're low on magnesium, one of the telltale signs is that you're a bit fidgety. You get these little muscular tics, one of the common ones in the eye, where it goes tick, 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 just like that. Or you can get them in other parts of your body. Cramping is another symptom. The other one is that you're more prone to the effects of the stress hormones I mentioned earlier, cortisol and adrenaline. And your brain tends to not quieten itself down. It's very active. It takes ages to wind itself down and then relax and eventually falling asleep. So supplementing with magnesium on top of your dietary pattern can be very useful, especially if you time it at dinner time or just before bed. So if you use a really good form of magnesium like magnesium citrate, magnesium biglycinate, or magnesium threonate, getting about 300 milligrams or so. Some people do a bit better if they're under a lot of stress loads, so they can go up to around 450 milligrams. Taking that dose before bed can assist your body with removing those symptoms so you're less fidgety. And then also it increases the activity of this neurotransmitter called GABA. GABA in the brain is meant to quiet and relax us. So if you've got more of that in the brain, you're more sensitive to it in the brain, so you respond to that neurotransmitter better, as you do with more magnesium in the brain. You find it easier to relax. Number 7, mental chatter. A lot of us can identify with this issue on where we're struggling to fall asleep, we're wired and tired, and our mind's racing. A lot of those times, this represents the fact that you haven't dealt with your stress throughout the day very well. So I'll give you an example. We've gone through our work day. We've got maybe some personal stresses. We've ignored them most of the day. Well, you kind of had to when you were working. But when all of a sudden we quieten down and relax at the end of the night, it all comes back into the brain, everything that you needed to worry about. So one of the techniques that I find is if you can be physically active and physically act out some of that stress, you'll find that you'll probably process that personal stress, as the example I've given, a lot better. Another technique that you can do is basically journaling. So essentially write down all of that mental chatter. It can be a very, very helpful technique to shorten the time to fall asleep, process a lot more of that mental chatter. Number 8, don't be digesting food before you go to bed. Now, this used to be something our parents used to tell us, don't eat too close to bed. Well, actually, it's very proven these days that it's not a good idea to do that. The digestive process is basically energy hungry, so you need to pump energy into that process, and you also need to put more circulation to your digestive tract. What this does is raise your heart rate and raise your body temperature. This is exactly the opposite of what your body's trying to do to fall asleep. It wants your heart rate to go down, it wants your blood pressure to go down, and it wants your body temperature to go down. And this cues in all of these processes to fall into a deep sleep. So if you eat, you're disturbing all of this. So create a 3-hour buffer from when you eat your dinner to when you're actually planning to go to bed. Some people need more, they need 4 hours. Some people can get away with only a 2-hour one. Number 9, alcohol and caffeine. Now, a lot of people associate alcohol with a good night's sleep, but if you're really aware, you'll find out that it puts a good half of your sleep, so you can fall asleep quite well. The first 4 or so hours feels pretty good, and then all of a sudden you might start to sweat, elevated heart rate, start waking, and tossing and turning. Essentially, this is the alcohol wearing off, and your blood glucose levels are dipping, and then what your body does from there is have to release adrenaline to bring them back up, and then people start doing all those symptoms. And a lot of the times people will have the habit of urinating a lot at that time too because they're already awake. So alcohol is terrible for sleep. It can even be more terrible for sleep than what caffeine is. So if you are going to consume alcohol, see if you can keep it to a minimum in terms of how many standard drinks you have, and also put it as early in the afternoon as you can. I'm not saying have it for breakfast, but have it, let's say, at a lunch rather than a really late dinner, because the closer that alcohol is to your sleep, the more of the impact it has, that, like I mentioned. Now, caffeine. Caffeine's a stimulant, so a lot of times this feels fairly obvious that it's going to be impacting on people's sleep. Now, you'll have caffeine-sensitive people like myself, where I know it affects my sleep if I have it too close to bed. You want to have a big buffer. So if you're a slow metabolizer like myself, I would choose low caffeine options like cacao, and I would have that only in the morning or at the latest at 12 o'clock or midday. Anything after that, I know it's going to be disrupting my sleep because it's still in my bloodstream. I haven't detoxified it out yet. Other people can be a little bit more tolerant of caffeine, and they're a fast metabolizer, as we say. Now, we could probably put their last coffee, for example, at about 3 p.m. Anything after that, they're going to have that caffeine still in their bloodstream, affecting their sleep. Lucky last, number 10. An amino acid called glycine can be very helpful. You can even combine this with magnesium supplementation that I mentioned earlier. Glycine has a similar effect to that neurotransmitter GABA. It's almost like if I increase GABA via magnesium, I can come in on another pathway via just glycine and have a very similar effect in the brain. But it quietens it down, relaxes it, and if you're tired already, it'll facilitate sleep. The other thing that it's very helpful with is if people feel really hot. So let's say I've got postmenopausal women, or I've got, let's say, a large middle-aged male. A lot of the times these stereotypical groups here feel too hot going to bed. Glycine can be very helpful here. Taking 5 grams at dinner or directly before bed assists in your body reducing its body temperature. And then, therefore, these individuals find it much easier to fall asleep. Now, even if you didn't have a temperature issue or felt hot before bed, taking glycine can relax you, facilitate that drop so that you fall asleep in an even shorter amount of time. And you find that you wake up revitalized after a really deep, restful sleep. Now, if you have any questions about any of the tips that I went through, please leave a comment below and I'll try my best to answer some of those questions and give you some feedback on how you can enhance your sleep and get a deep, restorative sleep. If you want to find out more about your health, please click the link down below to do your health questionnaire and find out where you sit with your health. If you want more expert advice on what you can do around, let's say, your sleep, or any other health issue that you may be suffering from, find out more information below via the link. And if you're interested, book in to see me. I would love to be able to help you enhance your health to levels you never thought possible.